Advocates are certain that the auto industry is accelerating towards electrification.
For any of the doubters out there, this is happening.
Learn what it's like to never have to go to the gas station, what it's like to drive without vibration or heat or anything else like that.
Of course, to get the benefits of going electric, you need a viable, fast and widely available network of public places to recharge.
When you look at the transportation sector, the cars are the stars, the vehicles are the stars. So the infrastructure and or the fueling, it's never the sexy part of the space, but it's the necessary part.
The charging infrastructure sector also faces a chicken and egg conundrum. Manufacturers need EV drivers as customers to earn profits and satisfy investors, but those drivers want chargers in place before they'll buy an EV. It's a fine balance, especially in countries like America, where for now at least, on national average, only around 9% of drivers are choosing to buy electric.
Which comes first? We have the chargers or the vehicles first? I'm certain it will be the vehicles, and we'll be playing catch up for the next couple of decades.
So you have to continue to build infrastructure despite where the market share is, because what we know from the data is over time, EVs are going to be the dominant form of transportations worldwide.
Here on American roads, regular petrol or gas stations still outnumber public charging points by more than 2 to 1.
For EVs to truly win over Americans, that ratio will need to change, and those charging stations will have to stretch across the country.
The American driver wants to go anywhere at their leisure using the interstate highway system. Having that infrastructure there, even if it's not used very much, is actually going to be critically important to getting to the mainstream.
But it takes an enormous amount of money to build, install and access electricity for the kind of national charging network that was envisaged by the Biden administration. It committed a total of around $7.5 billion for EV infrastructure, including the installation of fast public charging points every 50 miles or so across US highways. Now, however, that grand plan may be under threat.
This is a magnificent victory for the American people.
President-elect Donald Trump isn't as keen to support EV infrastructure as the outgoing administration. So the federal government's national fast charging network may take years to come online. But other kinds of charging units are rolling off production lines. According to one measure, overall numbers of public EV stations in the US were increasing by around 1,000 a week in mid-2024. And not all need to be fast. These mid-range Level 2 units are designed for regular top-ups at parking spots, rather than a specific trip to something like a conventional gas station.
What we have to do is break the old paradigm. The cars sit 95%, and it's much cheaper to install chargers that fuel them while they sit. That's what we need to do.
Level 2 mid-range chargers may be a convenient curbside alternative to the faster units, but many still require access and wiring into an electricity supply. That's one reason why another US manufacturer has designed its business model around charge points which require no access to the grid whatsoever.
There's no construction or electrical work required to make this, and that's because we're getting all of our electricity by converting renewable sources, solar in this case.
How are you able to convert enough sunlight into electricity to charge a car?
The thing we're standing under right now is actually tracking. It's following the sun as it moves across the sky. And that gives us about 25% more electricity than if it was a stationary range.
These units won't recharge an EV in an hour like many leading fast chargers can, but according to the company's CEO, they don't need to.
The great majority of charging is much more like filling up your cell phone than it is like filling up your old gasoline car. You don't need to run an electric vehicle till it's empty and then go somewhere and fill it up really quickly. If you look at these systems here, these people aren't waiting around while they're filling up. They plug them in and go and get on with something else.
The death of the traditional gas station is still far from now. But longer-term forecasts suggest that US sales of electric cars could overtake petrol models in as little as a decade. Positive news for those in the charging provider business.
According to McKinsey, we need 28 million chargers in the United States. Okay, at that level, we're talking any percent of that number by 2030, that's a healthy market share.
But who can or who will pay for the vast upgrades required to electricity grids and other infrastructure needed to feed an EV revolution when 1 in 3 American households don't have access to a home garage?
The great majority of the population in the US, in fact globally, will not be able to charge at home. This means we're going to have to provision on-street charging.
We do need, tens of billions of dollars more in infrastructure, but it's important to keep in mind that the majority of that funding is not going to come from the government. It's going to come from a combination of the private sector and also electric utilities, who have a lot at stake to make sure that the grid is able to grow and accommodate this increasing demand for electricity.
Oldsmobile Cutlass.
The country that once dominated the automobile industry now stands at a pivotal point. How policymakers and manufacturers respond to the supply and demand paradox around EVs and the charging infrastructure they need will determine America's role in what many see as an inevitable electric revolution.